Welcome back, everybody. If you see that little window at the bottom, that is President Trump getting ready to depart. He gets a turkey day too. I know he's working hard, but of course he's gonna take a little time with family. All right, everybody. So, as John was talking about, is the war in Ukraine close to coming to an end? Lordy, don't we all hope? We know that Ukraine has agreed to most of the points that President Trump's laid out in his peace plan. So, will Russia agree as well? Joining us now to discuss all of that is former Deputy National Security Advisor to President Trump. She's also the Vice President of National Security and Foreign Policy at the Heritage Foundation, Victoria Coates. Victoria, thanks so much for joining us tonight.
Well, happy early Thanksgiving, guys. Good to be with you.
Happy early Thanksgiving to you. And, you know, I look at the grand picture here over 10 years of ambiguity between Russia and Ukraine and, you know, very little clarity as far as what agreeable terms would look like. And in about 10 months under President Trump, we finally have that clarity. Where do we go from here?
We really do. And if we think back to, that 10, 12 years ago when Barack Obama was president and Vladimir Putin just seized the entire Crimean Peninsula in the dead of night, essentially. And the president of the United States said nothing, did nothing. There were some minor sanctions slapped on Russia, but essentially, Ukraine was forced to simply accept this annexation of their sovereign territory. And this was not done in any sort of orderly way. I understand the views of many of my Russian friends on the way Crimea was dispensed after World War II. I mean, there is a historical argument there, but this isn't how you just seize territory and just simply do it with impunity. Because when that happens, we then have the invasion of Ukraine proper under Joe Biden in 2022. And we've been in this grinding stalemate for almost 4 years. Donald Trump is the only person who's put a plan on the table that seems to have any kind of prospects for succeeding. And I think everybody should be a little bit more enthusiastic about this and a little bit more supportive. There are way too many Democrats and some of our weak-kneed European friends who are just assuming this is a disaster. It is literally the only pathway to get out of this horrible war.
Yeah, so important. There is a major hint in this that Ukraine has given some ground that it is going to give up some of its land, something that was always going to happen because it's lost some of its land in war. Tell us about some of the sticking points. It seems like NATO membership, no membership is one. What land specifically maybe change hands? Where do you think the hardest work ahead for Steve Whitcomb and the president and Marco Rubio are?
I think it is probably that border. So this is the Donetsk region in the east of Ukraine. It's the industrial heartland of Ukraine. There are assets there that I don't think Ukraine is going to be at all eager to give up, especially because Russia doesn't control them right now. I think you'll see Ukraine saying that, we can freeze the lines where we are, the battlefield reality right now, but we're not simply handing over territory that you don't control. You don't get like a gift bag at the conclusion of this invasion. You can maybe keep what you've taken for now. So that's one thing. I also am very unsure about this limit of 600,000 members of the Ukrainian military. How do you even count those guys? Are they combat soldiers? Are they firemen? Are they Coast Guard personnel? So there are all sorts of different ways that could become a very nebulous sort of situation. And then finally, as you mentioned, this kind of prohibition on NATO membership. Well, the only way you can prohibit a country from becoming a member of NATO is to pass it through the NATO Council, where I believe it has to have unanimous consent. And guess what this isn't going to get in the NATO Council? Unanimous consent. So that's sort of a non-starter to begin with. I think you can have Ukraine pledge that it will not join NATO for 20 years, which is quite frankly how long it would take them to get in anyway. But this idea that you're somehow going to prohibit it, I don't think that's possible.
So, Victoria, we went from a 28-point plan to a 19-point plan. Is there anything significant or I suppose even surprising that got axed to you?
Not really, Amanda. I mean, this was always going to be pared down into what Ukraine could accept. And I think we've also had some consultation with our European allies. I'm just back from Europe over the weekend, got an earful from a number of folks who were deeply concerned this was going to be the surrender of Ukraine in a matter of days. Well, clearly that hasn't happened. And the engagement with Secretary Rubio and his team with the very senior Ukrainian delegation in Geneva Geneva apparently was fruitful, and now we have, Steve Witkoff off to engage in some pre-Turkey diplomacy with Russian counterparts, and we'll see what they say. So, as I said, the 28-point plan was always probably overly ambitious, but it was a maximalist starting position. Now we're getting down to what's actually possible, and it seems much more realistic to me.
Yeah, that does. All right. So in the backdrop of this, President Trump and President Xi have a conversation, and they're lining up for President Trump to go visit Beijing early next year. I was taught a long time ago in Washington, if something looks like a coincidence, it probably is. Is there some tie between these two events?
There has to be. And this was an unusual phone call, John, in that Xi apparently initiated it. Usually the Chinese premier is called by the American president. The Americans initiate the phone call. In this case, right. Xi reached out. So that means he had something he particularly wanted to talk about. I think there is a lot of concern in China about their economic prospects on the potential limiting of the very highly sophisticated semiconductor chips that is a big hot topic of conversation in Washington literally this week. Are we going to put export controls on those things? And we do have this period of a year now when China has said they're not going to limit the export of the rare earth minerals that we so desperately need for our high-tech manufacturing. There'll be a lot of posturing that goes on there. There's the president's proposed visit in April. Xi said he's coming to the United States in the fall. So, maybe there can be a better step forward for the U.S.-China relationship, which would then put a lot of pressure on Vladimir Putin. So I think you're absolutely correct. There is a connection here.
Folks, just as we're sitting here, the president's ascending the stairs onto Air Force One, headed out to Mar-a-Lago. Did not make any comments, but you can see that in your box here. Amanda, sorry to step on it. I just want to make sure people know what was going on.
Yeah, thank you, John, for letting everybody know. Victoria, with respect to President Trump's likely upcoming conversation in person with President Xi, what does the timeline say about President Trump's leverage in that conversation? If this happens first, is that probably a large piece of leverage that President Trump has to make Xi come to the table and maybe to his knees on a lot of these economic issues?
In terms of the proposed conversation in April, Amanda?
Right. Yes.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think we're going to have a lot of water under the bridge between now and then. I think we're going to hopefully see a resolution of the Ukraine war. And if China feels they can start to play a more constructive role in bringing Putin to the table and getting that situation resolved, I mean, I think then that there are a number of other topics that could be on the table. Look, nothing would make me happier than if China suddenly decided to become a responsible international player, that they played by the rules. They're the world's second largest economy. So, they are important. We have to deal with them. But we need to manage this Ukraine situation in a way that is not going to embolden Xi to go into Taiwan, because that's, of course, the great concern. We're about to be in 2026, and 2027 is the year Xi has set out to potentially have the People's Liberation Army be ready for a move on Taiwan. So that's why I think this whole year that we're going into with both this and a second potential summit in the fall in the United States is really going to be fraught and charged. And I just have to tell you, one of the things I'm most thankful for this Thanksgiving is that we have President Trump in charge of that year.
Yeah, so important. Before we let you go, Victoria, real quickly, the Middle East, Hamas, it's kind of somewhat holding, but uncertain what happened there. Meanwhile, Muslim Brotherhood got an important designation from President Trump. I want to just get your two thoughts on that.
Yeah, I mean, we're watching Hamas try to reconstitute itself. Hopefully that's not going to be permitted. We've seen Israel take some additional actions against both Hamas and Hezbollah this week. So that remains a situation to be managed by Israel, but clearly now with U.S. support. And the Muslim Brotherhood designation is really important. I've been working with my old employer, Senator Cruz, on this for 10, 12 years. And so what the president has initiated here is kind of a bottom-up approach to this. We're going to designate some of the little splinter groups that are very supportive of Hamas, of other terrorist groups underneath the umbrella, if you will, of the Muslim Brotherhood, then you can start targeting the Brotherhood for providing material support to those groups. So this is going to take a lot of work. As I said, at 10, 12 years I've been working on it. I guess I failed, but with some assistance from the administration, hopefully we can make progress on this thing and start to unravel just this labyrinth of organizations and funding that is the Muslim Brotherhood, the political arm of radical Islam that is working here in the United States against our own government. It's ambitious, it's going to be hard, but so important that we've gotten it started.
Yeah. And let me clarify, you absolutely have not failed. You have shed light on this. You accomplished a lot of work. Your work bore fruit during President Trump's first administration with a lot of these issues. So thank you so much for all of your work, Vice President of National Security and Foreign Policy at Heritage, Victoria Coates. Victoria, happy Thanksgiving to you.
Have a great holiday. Take care.
Same to you. All right, everybody, we've got to take a very quick break, but we'll be back on the other side.
Hey, America, the FBI has been warning about a type of real estate fraud on the rise called home title theft, and your equity is the target. Here's how it works. Criminals forge your signature on a single document, use a fake notary stamp, then file it with the county, and just like that, boom, they're on record as owning your home. Using your ownership, they then take out loans against your equity or even sell your property, and you're not going to know about it until you get a foreclosure or collection notice in the mail, and that's not going to be a good moment. That's why I partnered with Home Title Lock, so you can protect your equity and find out today if you're already a victim. Use my promo code JTN at HometitleLock.com. You'll get a free title history report and a free child. Their $1 million triple lock protection. That's a great deal. $1 million to protect your home. That's 24/7 monitoring of your title records, urgent alerts to any changes, and if fraud occurs, their U.S.-based restoration team will spend up to $1 million to fix it. Find out why I trust Home Title Lock. Protect yourself like I did. Don't be a victim. Protect your equity today. Go to HometitleLock.com and use that promo code JTN. That's HometitleLock.com, promo code JTN.